Just, oh, just throwing it right in. We're coming in hot here, guys. Welcome to the first NFL show of the entire season that is covering a game here. We are covering the Hall of Fame game right here on Awesemo.com. I am Eric Lindquist, but of course, you're not here to hear my takes. I think one of the sharpest guys that we have in the stables here at Awesemo. I've never gotten to do a show with him, so I'm absolutely honored and privileged to be able to hang out with him a little bit here. Matt Gajewski, head up of Betting You, the podcast, along with my buddy Ben Rasa. He's so sharp. College sports, NFL, specifically preseason. There's nobody better to lead you up to lock than him right now. Matt, how you doing, my dude?
Man, I feel like, all those UFC fighters that come out and have that guy just screaming their name. That's probably the best intro I've ever received. So thank you for all the kind words.
I'm really fighting in the no, that's fine.
I'm really excited to do a show with you and super excited that we have football back. Last year we missed the preseason, and it's honestly one of my favorite times of the year.
It's also one of the most profitable times of the year. If you guys have been here at Awesemo, back when I was a sub before, now I'm just like the little protege who's kind of coming into all these different sports. But I love preseason NFL. And 2 years ago was fantastic year for me for preseason. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into putting these projections together. But again, Matt does all the heavy lifting for you. All you have to do is upload those projections, put them in, and you have an ability to be profitable, along with the advice that he's going to be giving here. It's going to be great times. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell as you're coming on in here. But let's just get down to it. We did not have preseason football last year. So for these people, 2 years removed from preseason NFL, what is the main difference between preseason and regular season?
The main difference is you're looking almost exclusively at playing time. In the regular season, a lot of it comes down to opportunity, how these players are being used, and that's all reflected in the projections. But the projections this time around are all driven by, are we going to see these players for a series? Are we going to see them for a quarter? Are we going to see them at all? And that's really what we're looking for in preseason.
Yeah, it's definitely more of an opportunity-based deal. It's also unbelievable when you look at some of the Vegas totals for some of these games. It becomes very defensive friendly. We have a 31.5 total is where this is sitting at here. I'm not sure if that moved here in the last hour since I looked at it. Pittsburgh opened as a 2-point favorite here, but defensively, we're really looking at targeting defenses, specifically where you can roster them on DraftKings, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that. The totals, that's the main one. And then two, all these players are seeing limited time. Your DST position is one of the actual positions that's going to accrue points for the duration of the game. Not only that, but you're going to be facing second, third, sometimes fourth string quarterback options, opening an avenue for a lot of defensive scoring. So defenses are going to be the crux of your lineups.
All right. Well, those are kind of your talking points right at the top. And then projections, of course. So when you're putting these projections together, you talked about having the opportunity be what you're weighing the absolute most, just playing time, getting on the field and being able to accumulate stats, period, not getting zeros in your lineups, avoiding guys who aren't playing. Those are kind of the important steps. But when you're putting these projections together, how can people best utilize them on a day like today with one game?
So you obviously have to think about ownership with this single game too, but you actually don't have to worry about correlation as much. And that's a question I've been getting a lot is how are we stacking these games? You can play multiple quarterbacks from the same team in certain environments. I remember in 2019, there was a situation where I played Jalen Hurd against opposing defense and took down a GPP. So you can do a lot of weird things. There's more avenues to approach that are normally off the table. And I think if you do some of those things, you'll be a little more contrarian.
I love that. And it's also nice to know that you can make some garbage lineups on accident and they probably have a higher EV than some of the lineups that you're like, oh, this makes sense and it's logical, because a lot of those lineups, I guarantee you other people have, especially in some of these massive tournaments. So would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, you'll see like a lot of 2 defense lineups, and that's where you should be in your low risk contests, your contests that are smaller fields. But once you get up to some of the bigger GPPs, and we have some pretty good prize pools tonight, getting contrarian in your captain slot and how you're approaching construction can make a big difference.
Agreed. And we've got 40 minutes here to talk some football leading up to lock here at the 8 p.m. Eastern time. Again, hit that like button as we get started, but let's just start digging into it. So we talked about quarterbacks. Let's just talk about quarterbacks first here. Defenses, we'll go in order. The typical way that we break down these games on these shows: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses, and then we'll take some questions if we have time here at the end. But obviously tonight, no Dak Prescott, no Ben Roethlisberger. It looks as though that just is going to open up a little bit of opportunity for some of these third stringers specifically. We're probably only going to see some limited work here for one Mason Rudolph, who you might know best as the guy who got his head beaten by a helmet by Myles Garrett. So that's how I know him for sure. Played at Michigan State, I believe. Was that where he was at back in the day?
Oklahoma State.
Close enough. It's the same shit. But absolutely, I absolutely love getting to some of these other guys on the Pittsburgh side, specifically Dwayne Haskins, who everybody has a glowing review. Everybody is fantastic in the preseason, but I take a little bit more from Mike Tomlin just because he handpicked him to come in from Washington after his abysmal stint there for the WFT. But talk to me a little bit about quarterbacks from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Haskins, I think, is your best play of these three. Mason Rudolph is the front runner for the number 2 job right now, but he's been with the program for a few years. So Pittsburgh kind of knows what they have in him as an asset. Dwayne Haskins, former first round pick. He's trying to rehabilitate his career. So the talent is certainly there, and it's been on display this preseason. Basically, the reports have suggested from all the beats that Rudolph is going to start this game. He's going to get somewhere around 1 quarter, maybe a quarter and a half. And then Haskins is going to take over and play into the second half. So it looks like Haskins has the safest playing time, and whatever's left is going to be Dobbs, who's very unlikely to make this roster.
So yeah, Dobbs was somebody who was shown up. I looked at some 2019 numbers. Looked like he showed out in a couple of the games, graded out well in week 2 of the preseason PFF. I take that for what you will. It's simply trying to grab straws and possibly have some viability for it. But if you're looking at ownership, obviously, I think Haskins isn't necessarily going to go under the radar between the two. If you're making 20 max, or if you're looking at playing stuff in the 150, how much might you be looking to allocate with Haskins, and how much might you be looking to allocate with Dobbs?
I have a slight preference to Haskins. It's about 75 to 25%.
Okay.
I think Haskins is your safer play. You really want to look at players like Dobbs in the large field tournaments. And again, they don't have a full 4 preseason games, so I think they're going to take a longer time just trying to evaluate somebody like Haskins and see if he's somebody they want to put on their active roster, maybe ahead of someone like Mason Rudolph.
All right. And on the other side, for the Cowboys, we've got their trio of guys being Garrett Gilbert, who ended up kind of being the one guy that we saw him play 1 week last season, ironically enough, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We had like 240 yards passing, touchdown, 1 pick. Just kind of blah, but decent enough quarterback here. He's got the number 2 job, it looks like. And then you're looking at Ben DiNucci and Cooper Rush. Ben DiNucci, it looks like, has a little bit of a rushing floor, but talk to me about quarterbacks on this side.
Yeah, it's funny. When we saw their quarterback Dak Prescott go down last year, then Andy Dalton subsequently missed a pair of games. DiNucci was the one that got the first crack at the job. He just performed terribly, so then they turned the reins over to Garrett Gilbert in the subsequent game. But at James Madison, like you mentioned, DiNucci did have good rushing upside. He had over 500 yards rushing in his final season. And that's something we really like for preseason, where most of the players on the field are going to be fairly inefficient. And we're just trying to pick up those cheap points. Your GPP scores tonight are not going to be egregiously high. So it's almost taking the safer plays. And I think for Dallas, he's going to be the safest one.
All righty. And now we've covered a little bit on quarterbacks here. So now let's start digging into some of the skill positions, because I think that this is really where you're going to be able to differentiate if you want to. We've seen a lot of low-owned running backs kind of emerge because either they get a goal line carry in preseason and targeting whoever. It is still going to have some points in this game, 31.5. It's super, super low compared to regular season standards, but somebody's going to probably get in the box here tonight, and you're going to want to be targeting them. Starting with the Pittsburgh side, they're slight favorites here. Right off the bat, Rico Dowdle looking like he's going to be the highest projected player coming from the Pittsburgh side here, along with, Rico Dowdle from the Dallas side was who I was looking at. Kalen Ballage, your guy out of Miami here, played with them. We were familiar with him back there in the day. Now here on Pittsburgh, looks like he's going to get a blunt end of the work here tonight. How are you handling running backs from the Pittsburgh side of the ball?
I actually prefer the Dallas runners a little bit to Pittsburgh, but the Pittsburgh side, you have a pretty narrow distribution. You're going to have one extra back in the rotation. We're not expected to see Benny Snell. He's been banged up at practice. Najee Harris is supposed to play 1 or 2 series. Tomlin's been vocal about wanting to get him out there, but I still think he's not somebody they're going to give extended work just with what they invested in him. And then Anthony McFarland, who is warming up tonight, has been banged up at practice too. Again, he's in his second year with the program. I don't think they're going to give him extended run because of the injury, which leaves basically 4 players. You have Kalen Ballage, He was a free agent acquisition for them. Jalen Samuels and Trey Edmonds had been with the Pittsburgh program for a few years. And then you have Tony Brooks-James, who was just signed recently, basically because of the Snell and McFarland injury. I don't think they're going to give him extended run whatsoever because he's just a camp body at this point, somebody that you're just putting on the field for reps.
All right. And then you said that out of the grouping of these guys, and it's weird to talk about cash, but I think especially because it's the first game out of the gate, I think going to cash in some of these guys makes a lot of sense. But if you're trying to take a shot on one of these lower owned running backs, who are you more inclined to? How do you see some of the work possibly breaking down? Because it is a guessing game, but it seems as though you got to where you are because you are very good at guessing how these snaps are going to work out.
Thank you. I appreciate it again. I think Ballage is somebody they will give extended run. Again, behind Najee Harris and Benny Snell, Pittsburgh's probably going to carry 3 or 4 backs. They're basically having to evaluate, do they keep a second-year player like McFarland? Do they keep a specialist like Jalen Samuels, who has some special teams viability? Or are they going to take someone like Ballage, who he's not the same level talent clearly as someone like Harris or basically any backfield he's been in? He's just not that caliber, but he can handle 3-down work. So how does he function with the offense? Trey Edmonds has been a preseason body throughout his entire career, and he's been working with the Dobbs unit in practice. So I don't think we see Trey Edmonds very early in this game. He's probably going to be working with the second and third team units tonight. And Tony Brooks-James, I'm not sure what we see out of him at all.
And so let's dig into one part that I really took out of what you just said, putting these units together. So when people are practicing in the preseason, when they're starting to get their reps together, are you starting to stack a little bit based on who's been practicing together a little bit? Is there a stack that really sticks out to you as far as like even a quarterback, running back that possibly is like a tandem, like a dump off that could result in a touchdown? There aren't going to be many touchdowns. So as you said, a little bit of everything's on the board. Is there one specific pairing that really sticks out to you?
I think it's going to be Dwayne Haskins and Kalen Ballage, and that's basically mostly a playing time thing. We think Dwayne Haskins will get the most time tonight. And then Kalen Ballage has been working both with Rudolph and with Haskins at practice. Again, Rudolph and Haskins are battling for that number 2 job. So you're just going to see Kalen Ballage work in a little bit with both units, which I think gives him more upside than someone like Jalen Samuels or Trey Edmonds.
All right. And something that you should all be avoiding is rostering Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, and let's see, on the Najee Harris for sure. We don't want to be rostering those cats tonight, correct?
We don't. You basically anybody who's going to start games clearly for these teams, you don't want to even consider. It goes to receivers too. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju. Amari's on PUP, so you shouldn't consider him anyway. But CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, you shouldn't consider these guys whatsoever.
That's a great segue. We're going to move ourselves over to wide receivers in 1 second here. I want to bring up your podcast that you're doing. You guys do a great job together. Ben Ross and Matt Gajewski. It's called Betting You. You guys need to be checking this out, bringing you all of the college football goods. Can Georgia dethrone Alabama, or which MAC teams to bet? Boston College, how are they going to fare? I feel like that's a team that Ben turns me on to every single year and twice on Saturdays for sure. It's not going to be pretty, but either way, these guys know so much about the college game, so much that not just the knowledge, it's just the ability to create ROI, the ability to make money. They can supplement your DFS income. They can add, just build your bankroll constantly. It just is, it's a quick podcast every single day that they're putting out here, or every other day. It's really, really interesting to be listening to. They're not just entertaining guys, but they're very, very knowledgeable as you will find in this industry. Go to Spotify, go to the Apple Podcasts, and download it today. Again, it is called Betting You with Matt Gajewski and Ben Rassa. All right, let's move ourselves to wide receiver here. I think that this is going to be where a lot of tournaments are won and lost because, as you said, we're going to get no Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. They're just going to be kind of put on ice here. Where are we looking at wide receiver here from the Dallas Cowboys?
Again, these teams have drastically different levels of personnel available. So Dallas is going to be out there with about 9 to 10 healthy receivers, and that's excluding the top players. Pittsburgh's going to only be out there with 6, assuming Juju and the starters don't play significant time. So I think Pittsburgh's where you want to focus your time. But on the Dallas side, they're a really interesting evaluation because their top 5 are basically set in stone with Cooper, Gallup, CeeDee, and then you have Cedric Wilson, who's been with the team for a while now. He's their 4, and Noah Brown's really valuable on special teams. So he's, unless someone crazy pops up, he's almost a lock to make this roster. That means all the rest of these players, the 9 players we'll see tonight, are fighting for one roster spot. I think the favorite is probably their 5th-round draft pick in Simi Fehoko, who's a really athletic receiver coming out of Stanford. I think we'll see him get extended run, and then a player like Malik Turner, who's been creating a lot of buzz. Everybody else, I think, will be basically with the 2nd and 3rd team.
And then from the Pittsburgh side, as you said, they have the receiving core that's just basically in shambles, would be the right way of putting it. It's so strange because it's the first game of the season. It's the first preseason game. And yet we're looking at only a couple dudes kind of existing out there for Pittsburgh on this side. For me, the one name that just sticks out, and I have to say it because he's coming in a lot lower owned than I expected, is James Washington. He seems like the guy that we're all familiar with. He's burned me 500 times in regular season DFS playing him at 3K. I'm sure he's burned you a time or two as well. That's just kind of what the man does. But compared to the rest of these players out here, I know Dallas, 28th in the league last season in total defense, according to PFF. That is what it is. You're not going to see a lot of the first string guys. You are going to see a couple of these rookies, and they've infused a new linebacking core there in Dallas. I'm curious to see how some of those guys play, but on the whole, this secondary is not very good here from the Dallas side for sure. And I just got to think that James Washington's kind of like a man amongst boys in that situation. Maybe there's another guy that you see as well, but talk to me first about James Washington because he's around 10%. That seems pretty low to me.
I think so too. He hasn't been having the best camp. So there was a report that came out from the beat writer for The Athletic. The name's escaping me right now, but the point is he said he expects James Washington to play in the second half. So that suggests to me that he's going to get time with both Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. I don't think his job is in doubt, but it does seem that someone like Chase Claypool has moved firmly ahead of Dwayne Washington, and they can kind of use him tonight and really see what they have in him as a player.
Somebody just said, why did it take me to literally just now to realize everybody's 7,600? Yeah, that's the other part of preseason I guess we didn't bring up. Salaries aren't really a thing. You can play whoever the heck you want. You can play them in whatever order that you want. Everybody's ancillary because there are just so many dudes. And then to price it would price out of plays that may or may not exist. And plus, all the guys that are actually good aren't actually going to be playing.
Yeah, it's a really fun game. And what it comes down to, I think, is who are you going to captain? So again, salary doesn't matter, but the real game theory aspects that you're considering are, okay, can we play somebody like a defense and captain right now? It's going to make you feel uncomfortable, but it is really the safe play. And then with all of your skill position players, you do need something like a splash play to get it done there. But roster construction is more important, obviously, than salary. We just don't have to consider it whatsoever.
All right, let's move ourselves down to some Pittsburgh wide receivers that are not named the aforementioned James Washington, who I'm sure is going to ruin all of my tournament lineups tonight. So that goes without saying. Going to the rest of these dudes, Ray McLeod, Isaiah McCoy, Anthony Johnson, Rico Busey, all of them seem like they're going. Oh, Matthew Sexton as well. Looks like he'll be active. McLeod didn't practice, but he might be going here. I'm not sure whether that's going to be a thing or not. You could get a super low owned dude in that regard. But really, who are the guys? Isaiah McCoy's projecting out the best for everybody. 28.5% ownership we have coming in for him right now, the highest of this grouping. But how are you prioritizing the rest of this Pittsburgh team?
I don't think so. If Ray McLeod, if he does play, I don't think it'll be for extended period of time. I think behind the big three in Johnson, Claypool, Smith-Schuster, you basically have James Washington and McLeod, who are strong bets to make this roster. McLeod valuable on special teams. James Washington's strong deep threat. So I don't know how much we'll need to see of them. That report was really interesting with Washington playing into the second half. I do believe the Steelers beat, but I think they'll take a longer look at players like McCoy, Johnson, and Sexton. And kind of just to break down these guys for you, I think McCoy, Johnson, Bussey, and Sexton will be the players that are on the field the most. Isaiah McCoy is a former MAC player. He's kind of a deep threat burner downfield. Anthony Johnson is a former MAC player as well. He played at Buffalo. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons in his final 2 years. But he's going to be more of your bigger body possession style receiver. Rico Bussey, he was a Hawaii transfer. He now enters his rookie season here. There's not much to say about him. He's a little bit smaller. And then you have Matthew Sexton, who is a tiny little slot receiver coming out of Eastern Michigan. So it's funny, you have three former MAC players here. Sexton is really the only one that profiles as a slot-only receiver. I don't know what you really do with that information. Perhaps he's the only one that can play like the Deontay Johnson role in the slot. But outside of those players, I don't think we see a ton of Tyler Simmons till the final guest drives when we get the Dobbs unit out there.
So as you said, I think we're going to be prioritizing more guys from this side. Which quarterback are we looking to pair Haskins the most with some of these guys, or is there an exclusive tandem that you see between maybe Haskins and somebody else that you're like, those are the two that I really want to build my tournament lineups around?
So the three I have the most of are Washington, McCoy, and Johnson. I think McCoy and Johnson are the two most likely to make the roster outside of the 5 players we already mentioned. And I think the battle will come down to them. Bussey and Sexton, I don't think their chance of making the roster is as likely, so you probably see them a little bit later in the game. I still have pieces of that offense, but it's more heavily weighted towards the McCoys, Johnsons, and Washingtons.
All righty. Anything else that you really think needs to be touched on from wide receiver?
We could talk Dallas. I think Pittsburgh, okay. We covered everybody. They have 6 bodies, so if you're taking wide receivers, you want to be focused on the Pittsburgh side. And again, behind Malik Turner and Simi Fehoko, this Dallas team has funneled targets in the past to players. I remember in 2019, John Vea Johnson was somebody who was on the field for like 45 snaps in certain games. I'm not sure if they'll do that here, but a couple other names for GPPs you should look at: Johnny Dixon, Aaron Parker, Brandon Smith. He's a rookie from Iowa. You have Brennan Eagles, a rookie from Texas, Cyrus Mitchell from Mississippi State. And Reggie Davis is a player they used a ton in 2019 in the preseason. He hasn't been able to crack the roster basically any of these years, at least to start the year. So I think he's on the outside looking in and probably doesn't see as much time as maybe he did in the past.
All right. Noah Brown as well. Did we talk about Noah Brown at all?
Yeah, we talked. I mentioned Noah and Cedric briefly. I think they're almost locks to make the roster. So I think we see them with Garrett Gilbert, and then I think they're off the field.
Okay, because Noah Brown got signed to a 1-year deal. Saw that he was 25. He played a lot of special teams, as you said, as well, last season. 154 total receiving yards. I just remember clicking his name a lot at 1K in showdowns with the Cowboys once upon a time. And again, didn't go very well, but you try. You're trying to target that one guy. And in the preseason here, we're trying to target the one guy who might get a touchdown or, God forbid, I mean, James Washington, please catch a bomb tonight. That's really what I'm taking out of the wide receiver position. But let's move ourselves to tight end, because I think this gets really, really interesting as well. So it's very, very thin here, specifically on the Pittsburgh side. I think that's probably the right spot to go to. Marcus Baugh, what are we doing with this cat? Because it looks like he's the only pass-catching tight end that will exist on that side of the ball tonight.
He is. It's funny. They actually have been moving Derek Watt to some inline duties. He's typically their fullback. He's a little versatile, but they've been using him at tight end just because they're so hurt. So we're not expecting Ebron Freiermuth or Zach Gentry to play tonight, leaving just Kevin Rader and Marcus Baugh. Kevin Rader is essentially just a blocker, leaving only Marcus Baugh to handle pass-catching duties. In preseason, tight end is the most volatile position, similar to how tight end functions in the regular season. So I don't think Baugh is a preferred play, but with the distribution of targets being a little narrowed here, there's a chance, maybe like in 2019, if you guys were playing a Tanner Hudson game when Tampa Bay was down to just a couple tight ends, we could see that here. I think it's a little bit unlikely, but like you mentioned, there aren't a lot of bodies in this tight end room. How
much should we be valuing him today compared to some of the wide receivers? Because they're already short on that side of the ball with the right wide receivers here. Kevin Rader, you don't have any desire to go to him. He's kind of a primary blocker. Your article was fantastic today, by the way. Great primer to kind of start looking into some of these guys. But Kevin Rader, he's generally a blocker. Any viability to maybe taking a shot where he ends up getting a goal line look or something?
Only in the biggest GPPs.
Gotcha. Okay. Wanted to double check. No stone left unturned because, again, we are already turning over stones left and right. Let's go to the tight end spot over here for the Dallas Cowboys. We all know the names of Dalton Schultz and whomever else, but it doesn't look like anybody's gaining any ownership here whatsoever. Blake Jarwin's a name that we've seen before as well. I can't imagine that he's going to get many looks here tonight. But is there somebody there between Jeremy Sprinkle, who sounds like he was a former basketball player? Is that true or not? I just made that up.
I actually don't know his background. He played at Washington for a number of years, so he's a veteran in the league. Then you have a pair of Michigan tight ends, former Michigan tight ends, and Sean McKeon and Nick Eubanks.
All right. It sounded like a basketball name. So I wanted to, just in the event that he was, it seemed like a fun fact to throw out there as well. But who would we possibly take a shot here from Dallas? Because it seems like a pretty thin play.
I think it's Sprinkle or McKeon, but I don't want to take any of these tight ends, to be honest.
All right. Well, then that's an easy write-off here for us. We got 20 minutes left here before we get to defenses and kickers, because again, kickers need love too. That's kind of the way that Showdown works. Hit that like button once more. It is very helpful for everything that we're doing here. We have the projections here that Matt did, that he diligently put together. They are 100% free, so check those out today. And also check out our two new YouTube channels. We have the Awesemo Odds channel. We have the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. Matt Gajewski's been working every single day to kind of put everything together there. Him and Lofty have been doing a bunch of videos. I've gotten a chance to chat with Lofty, with Ben Rasa, with Greg Ehrenberg, with all of the hosts you know and love here at Awesemo. Definitely be checking that out because we're putting a lot of time and effort into those. Click subscribe. That goes a long way for us and helps us to be able to do all of these free shows for the preseason. We're going to do as many of these as we humanly possibly can for you, but we got to get those likes up and those subscribes up over on those other channels. That's going to be how we end up kind of getting it to, we can kind of like keep doing this for you. We want to give you all of the free content that we can. Of course, we want you behind the paywall as well. So check that out as well for an Awesemo Plus sub. But if you want to help us right now, we got Tyler putting it up on the screen. He's the man. Producer Tyler, thank you so much. Click that subscribe button on anything. I believe there's a link here posted in the YouTube chat as well at the top of the page. Just click a subscribe. It goes so far for us and goes to help us build that channel and continue to do the great work that we can do over here. All right. Now what everybody was waiting for, a game with the 31.5 total. You can't not talk about defenses here. How important are defenses on this slate? And on FanDuel, we don't have to think about it so much, but on DraftKings, how much should we be looking at playing Steelers and Cowboys defenses in our captain slot?
I haven't looked at the exact ownership, but I do have a fair amount of both of them in the captain slot. I have a lot of lineups that incorporate both defenses. Again, these players aren't going to be on the field the whole time. There's only two players that are accruing points through the entire game. It's your Pittsburgh DST and your Dallas DST.
Okay. And so which one? So right now I'm pulling up the ownership here. And rightfully so. I'm just going to say rightfully so. Cowboys, actually 17% here. Maybe the Steelers aren't showing up here. We got to probably get that looked at here over on Cruncher right now. I mean, the Cowboys and Steelers are going to be your highest owned captain plays, I would assume so. The floor is just so elevated when you see 31.5 there. If there's any kind of a defensive touchdown, you're completely toast. But in cash games specifically, is there one defense you prioritize over the other?
Yeah, in these situations, I'm basically going to defer to the Vegas totals. Again, there's so much volatility with the third or the fourth stringers playing in these games. The chance for turnovers are high on both sides. And this is somewhere where I'm going to split ownership. But right now, my slight preference is towards Pittsburgh, just with them being the slight favorite in the game.
So Kyle Devorchek, another guy here, great Awesemo dude. And, wish him well as he's good. He's crushing everywhere, but he's saying that if Fehoko and Four Loko, there's some correlation there in that play, right? It's got to be crazy.
Kyle knows better than anybody. He was on that crazy Christmas stream.
Oh, crazy Christmas stream. What happened there? Or do we not talk about that?
No, I drank a Four Loko.
Oh, did that go well for you?
No.
Did you have a heart attack? I feel
I'm
like
still here, so no, I'm doing good. But
I'm 33. If I had Four Loko, I'd be dead.
Kyle comes in and brings this up, of course. Thank you, Kyle.
It's only the good stuff. I mean, that would have been like the last football show of the season probably for you. So it all comes back around. It all comes back around. You had to get grilled right off the bat. That's fair. Let's talk kickers. So kickers are fun. You said that we've got a FanDuel kicker that we need to be aware of because, again, Boswell won't be out there here for the DraftKings slate. Who are we looking at over on FanDuel then to possibly have in deep GPPs over there?
Yeah, so you have a gentleman by the name of Hunter Niswander, who's not in the DraftKings player pool, but he is in the FanDuel player pools. Kickers, they're a pretty decent bet in these games just because when they're kicking extra points, they're accruing points, and they will outscore a lot of the wide receivers. They're more floor plays to me than GPP plays, but you can certainly look at somebody like Niswander who's going to get all the kicking opportunities. Conversely, Pittsburgh has two kickers right now on their roster, Chris Boswell and Sam Sloman. I think they'll probably give them both opportunities, so that's a situation I'll be trying to avoid.
I agree. I was going to bring that up as well, where you had two kickers. They brought the one guy in. It's going to be a quarterback competition. What am I saying? A kicker competition. That's everybody's favorite for sure, especially if you're a Bears fan. But Hunter Niswander, you are a Bears fan?
Yeah.
Oh, rip.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. This is a tough scene.
It's a real tough scene. I mean, and I know I have Gary Anderson in my blood. Like I can never get rid of that stink. It's just haunting me in my dreams. But we're back to it. Hunter Nislander. He is the guy that I'm clicking on in some FanDuel plays over on FanDuel in that big GPP, the $5.55. You should probably do the same. I think that he's probably the safest kicker play out of the grouping. Not available over on DraftKings. So get all of your kicker exposure tonight over at the Blue site. Check it out. Anything that we did not cover here, again, we flew through this. We had 45 minutes. I wanted to be a little cognizant of time. I didn't know how fast we were going to get through things. Is there something specifically that you wanted to touch on that we did not bring up?
Yeah, we kind of glossed over the Dallas running back, so I'll circle back to that for a second.
Okay.
Again, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, both not expected to play much. Behind them, there is a competition for the third spot. Rico Dowdle, the former South Carolina back, is expected to be that third back on the roster. And Dowdle's interesting. He was a player that actually caught a fair amount of balls at South Carolina, so he profiles for 3-down work. We like that in preseason. He can catch some easy dump-offs. But I do think we'll see him a little bit with the Garrett Gilbert and the Ben DiNucci units. Behind him, the roster consists of two fullbacks. They have a running back coming out of Tiffin College by the name of Jaquan Hardy. And then they have a former Marshall running back, the rookie Brendan Knox, who's a big, like 6'2", 220-pound bruiser who ran like a 4.65 40-yard dash, didn't catch any passes in college. So I think the overall best profile comes from Dowdle.
So, I mean, he feels like the cash play. 88th percentile burst score as well. Player profiler for that one. 67th percentile in the 40-yard dash. So above average speed, way above average burst score. And he attended a SEC school. I think that those all bode well for him as well. Jaquan Hardy, yeah, I don't mind some shots there. Do you have any issues with pairing some of these guys together, considering they probably won't ever see the field together and you're just kind of banking on possible touchdowns?
Yeah, you absolutely can do that. I would like to do this in backfields that are a little more condensed. Fortunately here, we basically just have three rushers on both sides. Again, not expecting to see much Elliott and Pollard. So really, I think the carries are all going to go to Dowdle, Hardy, and Knox. And then on the Pittsburgh side, it's going to be a few more rushers just because I guess McFarland's going to try to play tonight. So that gives you Najee for a series or two, McFarland, Ballage, Samuel, and Trey Edmonds. So if you're trying to play multiple rushers for one backfield, it's going to be on the Dallas side.
In lineup construction, the one other question that I wanted to ask you was the viability of playing three quarterbacks together. So we talked about Ben DiNucci having a rushing floor, whatever that means in terms of a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, possibly as an absolute max of play here for him in this spot. A possible rushing touchdown for 1 or 2 in case. I can't imagine QB sneaks are a big part of the repertoire in preseason football by any means, but in the event that they end up on the one, sure, why not get Josh Dobbs smacked in the face? Is there any viability to doing something as crazy as that even?
I think you can do that. What you're really looking for in playing 2 quarterbacks for the same team, again, it's all reading the tea leaves of how much these players are actually going to be on the field. So Dallas, for example, you have Garrett Gilbert and Ben DiNucci. I think those two will handle the majority of the game with Cooper Rush coming in probably for the fourth quarter. If you're going to play 2 together, it's probably Gilbert and DiNucci. And DiNucci does give you a solid rushing floor, which you like. In the past, they've let Gilbert sling it a little bit in the preseason, which is something we'd like to. Cooper Rush is a distant third in this battle. Then for Pittsburgh, again, it's going to be Mason Rudolph battling Haskins. This team, I'm a little less likely to implement the 2 quarterbacks just because this team kind of knows what they have in Rudolph and Dobbs already. We're not expecting to see much Dobbs. I would much rather just concentrate my ownership with Haskins here.
All righty. And of course, Rinpack hanging out there, keeping track of everything for me. He's the seeing eye who covers me everywhere that I go for sure. I do an NBA Slate Starter podcast with him. We're going to be kicking that back up again once the NBA season rolls around. But he just hit me up. Nick Eatman, who's the beat writer of the Dallas Cowboys, said the QB order for tonight, it's going to be Gilbert, Rush, and DiNucci. Gilbert could see the entire first half depending on how things go. What does that tweet inspire in you, considering I have no idea how to read that?
Yeah, that's a little bit surprising based on what they've done in camp. But it obviously makes Garrett Gilbert a much better play. I'm going to search for this tweet right now. Who is
Nick Eatman? He is the beat writer. And again, a lot of preseason is just digging through Twitter and trying to figure out what are some of these snap shares going to be for people that you trust. Nick Eatman, so just how it sounds, Nickeatman, beat writer for the Dallas Cowboys. and he flat out said that that's going to be the QB order for tonight. That seems like a reputable source, and that seems like a reputable comment. I think that that's going to make me here with 10 minutes left to go to lock. I mean, I don't want to say that I just want to like switch off of DiNucci so quickly, but he was originally going to be a path that I was taking in a lot of lineups. In the last 9 minutes here that we have left, what would you be doing with QBs based on that information?
I think you just switch over to, so I think you pivot off DiNucci and you move to Gilbert.
Yeah.
Gilbert's been productive in the past.
Yeah, and he looked pretty good. He's an older dude. I know that I've seen him around the block as a backup in a number of spots. Again, he played that one game last season against this Pittsburgh team and was pretty decent. I mean, it was a whatever spot. I mean, obviously they were pulling at hairs trying to find anybody with all of the injuries, and obviously Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton going down in those spots. But it was very, very thin there, a quarterback, and he seemed like he was serviceable enough. So I think, based on that information, I might want to be going to that. I might combine him in some lineups with DiNucci. I was talking about doing that perhaps earlier. Maybe you see more of that on the other side of it. What does this do for Rush? Because I don't know what I necessarily want to do with him. Of course, he could luck box into a touchdown throw or something could happen. But considering the rushing floor of DiNucci, how would you break down those three quarterbacks?
It doesn't seem like they're going to give much work to Rush and DiNucci now. Based on this tweet, Gilbert could get the first half depending on how things go. You'd think that would leave one half for Rush and DiNucci, which is, I would rather just look to someone like Haskins. I would rather play Gilbert. Again, if you're trying to stack these quarterbacks for the same team, ideally you would want them to get like a quarter and a half to a half all themselves.
Look at that. Tyler putting the tweet up on the front screen here, just so that people know that I did not make stuff up and that Rinpack is sure. So Rinpack's certainly not a liar because the guy just wins everything. So I probably want to follow in his footsteps. And unfortunately, that means he's probably playing NFL preseason DFS, and there might not be enough money for all of us to win this evening. But I digress. We're going to try our best. Hopefully that information pans out for us here. But we've got 8 minutes left here. If you guys have any questions on somebody that you want to have addressed, there's nobody who knows better than Matt. He knows every single player from these college rosters. He covers everything very, very in depth. Check his articles out. I mean, he's putting out content as well up on the fantasy football site, on the Awesemo odds site, constantly building a bunch of great content over there. So check that out. But specifically, if you guys have anything that you really want to talk about that we did not cover, or something that you might be wondering about specifically on how to handle this in the 7 minutes left, let us know here. But for DiNucci, for me, I'm just switching a lot. So I had a cash lineup that I was going to be playing here today, and I'm just going to switch it to Gilbert, I think, based on what we're seeing in that tweet. But are you going to be doing the same?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll let you do that here as everybody's asking everything else here. But otherwise, I think we covered everything pretty darn in depth. Who's the make or break player for tonight? Let's do this. Let's kind of round out the show with this. If there's one player that you think is just going to be completely overlooked that could break this slate, who do you think that is?
I think you would look to some of the backup running backs. So Pittsburgh's a really good example of this, where they know what they have in a lot of their rushers. So you're talking about like Anthony McFarland, who's been with the team. Jalen Samuel's been with the team. Troy Edmonds been with the team. I'm looking at someone like Balaj, who we already talked about extensively, to get some extended runs so they can really see what they have in him as a player.
And then is there like another guy that we can kind of look at? Because the wide receiver core, we covered a number of those guys. I brought up Noah Brown because I thought that just seemed like a fun guy to burn money with as well. Johnny Dixon, I think, would be another dude that we could be looking at. I don't want to play any of those starters. And Fehoko seems like he's going to be the guy who's the highest owned for Loco, if you will, as he's now appropriately dubbed. Is there another guy from Dallas that we could be looking at that we didn't talk about?
In their receiver core, I think it's probably going to be Malik Turner, who is somebody that's been having a positive preseason. I think he's neck and neck with Fehoko for this last receiver spot. It would really be a surprise if someone like Dixon, Parker, Smith, or Eagles made the roster, in my opinion.
All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at this core for tonight's game. I think we talked about defense, and then obviously Gilbert is a big part of that now. Looking at the rushers, for sure. You want to be looking at Dowdle. You want to be looking at Balaj. I think that Matt did a great job of breaking down all of those guys. I would call them all core plays. Would you agree with that?
I think Dowdle is for sure. The quarterback order we gave, I think, is where you want to look to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going directly in order there. How about this? Between Haskins and Gilbert, who are you prioritizing more now?
Haskins
For sure. Okay.
Yep.
I like that call too. I think maybe I doubt people are going to be able to react to this news enough in time. I think Haskins probably ends up the most, but I think he should be. I think Haskins has the most upside out of those QB groupings. And I think you broke that down well as well. Let's see. He gave you the quarter. Yeah, we gave out a lot of the quarterback order here. Cowboys wide receivers, we touched base on pretty much all of them here as well. Somebody else said, talking about Dallas running backs, we covered them. I think we did a pretty good job of breaking down everything. We got 4 minutes here left to lock. Make sure you get your lineups in. I'm going to kind of frantically throw the last couple ones that I have in. Again, being on a live show for preseason football, going back and forth, it was going to get exciting. And I think that tweet kind of makes it a little bit more fun here going forward. I'm hoping that can end up being a little bit of an edge here tonight. But is there anything that's showing up in your lineups here as we're finishing it out that you find surprising, or is there kind of like a player that you're getting a little bit more of or less of than you were expecting?
I have almost 100% of both defenses in every lineup, which is
there we go.
Which I think makes people probably feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I think that is still probably how you want to be approaching this. And then from there, I have a lot of the Pittsburgh receivers and a lot of the Dallas backfield. I don't have a lot of Pittsburgh's receivers stacked. It's usually just as a one-off. And then I have quite a bit of Dowdle, quite a bit of Ballage.
Okay. A lot of Dowdle as well. All right. I'm going to finish my little lineup here as well. Kind of avoiding the rest of those running backs from Pittsburgh as well, right? We're not kind of looking at taking shots on Samuels or McFarland, the guys you said that they kind of know what they have with.
I would rather not look at Samuels because he's almost exclusively a pass catcher. And then okay. I think you can play guys like McFarland. The injury is kind of interesting with him. I'm not sure how much it's going to affect him tonight, but someone like Tony Brooks-James, I don't think he plays much at all. They just signed him. Trey Edmonds has been with the team a lot over the last year. So if he plays, I think it's with the Dobbs unit, which is where he's been functioning anyway. So maybe Edmonds is the player I would look to after Ballage.
Okay.
I do have some Edmonds.
You do have some Edmonds. Okay. That was the one guy. I had a couple shares of him just based on some of the stuff the projections were kind of spitting out for me. Wanted to double check on that to make sure that I wasn't going a little bit overboard here with that, but it looks like it's all well and good here. Most upside Pittsburgh wide receiver, James Washington, right?
James Wash. I would rank them James Washington 1, Isaiah McCoy 2, Johnson 3, Bussey 4, Sexton 5.
And then somebody said Marcus Bow, a decent flyer at tight end for sure.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, as do I. Pairing him with Dwayne Haskins, I think, seems like a decent enough thing to do as well. Let's see. Malik Turner was showing up in that one. That's fine by me. Steelers D or Ballage at captain?
Steelers D.
Yeah, definitely Steelers D for me as well. Again, Rinpack just saving the people here. Rinpack, I might have to send you, the $5 that I win on ROI this evening. I was going to say, I got you covered, dude. You're going to have some Chick-fil-A on me tonight. That's coming your way for sure. But otherwise, we got 1 minute left to lock. I think we kind of got everything covered here. Make sure you get those lineups in. But Matt, any final words for the people on the first NFL show live before lock of the season?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you guys so much. I'm super happy the preseason's back. Really happy you all came to hang out with us. Hopefully we provided enough information. If there's anything you'd like to hear in future streams, we'll have quite a few of them before all the other preseason games. So make sure to let us know. But overall, just thanks for being here.
All right. Boosie or Washington? Somebody had a quick question on that one as we're closing out.
Washington.
Same here. James Washington, I can't wait for you to just ruin my life here this evening. That'll be great. First game right out of the gate here. I'm going to finish in my lineups. We've got 8 seconds here to go. I'm very, very excited about this evening. Fihoko, there we go. And we are officially locked. Anything you want to plug here on the way out the door, Matt?
If you're a college football fan, check out all the work that Ben Raza and myself are doing. We have the Betting You podcast, and there will be quite a bit of college football coverage this fall.
This was so much fun. I had an absolute blast. This 45 minutes flew. It was also kind of, we got it injected a little bit in there. 485 of you guys in the chat there. Hit the like button, subscribe button, and notification bell on the way out. He's Matt Gajewski. I'm Eric Lindquist. Have a great night and enjoy some football this evening.